Hello UMF community and symposium viewers, my name is Samantha Taylor. I am a music major and a visual arts major. I'm a senior here at UMF, and I'm here to share the project that I made for my honors scholar certificate. So it is based on my music major and my studies there, and it is a concept video game original soundtrack. So in my time at UMF, the academic interest in video games has only grown and grown. It's a mixed media art form at its finest. It's a full immersive experience. You know, video games really transform your senses and your sense of self, and you are inserted into this world. It has powerful potential as an art form and as a communicative tool, and has been making strides in the industry every single day. Video games may have a bad reputation, but there are so many games that disprove that video games are worthless, and they have so much to learn from. And a large part of the reason why video games work is because of its music. It's well timed to any situation. It keeps us engaged sonically into the world and makes us feel like we're connected to the characters in a new and interesting way. That's why I wanted to explore this idea of composing music for video games specifically based off of a few characters and scenarios that I've been thinking of for a very long time. So before we dive into my music in particular, I wanted to talk a little bit about genres of video games and the genres that inspire me the most. There are different styles of gameplay in a lot of video games. You have the platformers like Mario, you have first-person shooters like Call of Duty, you have third-person, you have battle royales, you have all kinds of different genres of play styles. But then there's also genres of storytelling and narrative structures. So one of the major ones in video gaming is an RPG, which is very much inspired by role-playing games like D&D and Pathfinders, where you assume a character or characters and you focus on improving your stats by leveling and making achievements in the game. The specific kind of RPG that has influenced me throughout my life is turn-based RPGs. So Dragon Quest, Final Fantasy, the Xenosaga trio, those are all games that rely on a play style where you attack and then the monster attacks in turn. It's just an exchange of combat style that's really specific. And so there's a lot of video games that have amazing soundtracks, especially in the style of the RPG. Nobuo Uematsu of the Final Fantasy series is considered to be the Beethoven of video games. He has composed for 11 of the Final Fantasy title tracks, as well as doing other things, including doing some work for other series and stuff like that. His biggest achievement, I think, has to be his contributions to the Final Fantasy franchise. Next, we have Junichi Masuda. He's the composer for Pokemon, which is a really popular turn-based RPG where you collect Pokemon and fight them against each other. His musical style is very upbeat. It's very cheerful. It's less about the narrative and more about the colors and the characters and everything else. And then one of my all-time favorite game series, Kingdom Hearts, is composed by a female composer. Her name is Yoko Shimomura. She is super talented. She makes really somber, beautiful fight scenes that are just so devastating and heavy. Jake Kaufman is really good at bringing back some OG sounds. He's responsible for the Shovel Knight series. He really leans into the 8-bit, which is the original kind of compositional tool that many game designers had to use. 8-bit and 16-bit, those sorts of things where there's only a certain amount of sounds that you can produce because you're working off of the direct hardware of the video game console. Another composer who works in this style is Toby Fox. He is the sole designer and composer for the series Undertale. and he just ran with his own characters and colors and has some really clever tricks to illustrate when a character is good versus evil and things like that. So those are some of my Sonic inspirations, and now I just want to showcase a few of the tracks that I think are absolutely necessary in a video game OST and what I did to make those happen. My travel theme, which I believe is just called Travel Theme Number 1, is I think my most inspired by Nobuo Uematsu's compositional style. It's very flowy, it's very landscapey, it's painting a picture of an area. It's not really getting you anywhere except for you're living in this space. Travel themes tend to be like that, and you don't really know the goal, especially in RPG. You're not necessarily getting to anywhere anytime soon, especially as you're working on leveling and character ascension. So then I also have a few battle themes that I compose. One is called Battle Theme 1. One is a dungeon fight where you fight like a mini boss. Battle themes are very, very importantly upbeat and repeatable because battles, especially in turn-based RPGs, tend to be pretty long, especially if you're under-leveled for the area. They need to be exciting enough that you want to fight, but they can't be too narrative-based either, because maybe this fight only really focuses on this one little boss and maybe he doesn't have much to do with the whole story. Or maybe it's a generic monster or generic situation, random encounter, you fight them all the time, you know? You want to be used to what you're listening to, especially if you're expecting a fight. There are always unique character themes, especially for quirky side characters and NPCs, the non-playable characters that you rely on to get you through your quest. If you have played anything from the Legend of Zelda series, or if you've played Nier Automata, you might be familiar with the archetype of the quirky salesman. He will sell you things that you need, and he always has some sort of silly theme to get you through his shop. So I invented one of those themes. Hopefully, you know, they're carnival themed, they're fun, they encourage you to buy, they're salesmen. That's the goal. And then there's always big narrative arcs where your protagonist has to follow a specific, like, in their journey, they hit a bump in the road, or maybe they find what they're looking for, or they get lost, or something like that. A major twist or turn in the story that deserves its own moment. So there are usually specific songs that reflect those moments. I have composed a few because they're based on a couple of characters that live in tension between light and dark, and so there's narrative moments that reflect that. The most important track, I think, in a video game, you have to get it right, it's no ordinary battle theme, but it's the big bad, it's the final boss's battle theme. If the battle theme for the final boss isn't compelling, I don't think that the final boss would be compelling either. Kind of like in Final Fantasy 12 and 13, Nobuo didn't write those. Some other talented composers did, but they fell kind of flat. Where I pulled inspiration from for this big bad theme, I pulled from Yoko Shimomura's track for Xemnas in Kingdom Hearts 2. He's a very tragic character. He doesn't have a soul of his own. He doesn't have feelings. He's a very tragic puppet in the context of the series. And so for my big bad, I wanted to capture similar feelings, but I also still wanted to keep the energy of a boss fight. So that was my biggest balance, my biggest struggle when I had to combat the idea of getting a somber, kind of tense, kind of sad piece, but also high enough energy that you need to accomplish your goal. So those are my pieces. That's a little bit about video games, and that's a little bit about what I've done. I have to turn corners here because I, as a member of the honors program, am part of the honors accelerated travel course option, and so I wanted to tell you a little bit about my trip to Japan. I'm really, really grateful to have had this opportunity, and I'm really excited to share a little bit about it with you. So there were so many things that I didn't anticipate from going to Japan. There were things I expected because if you haven't noticed, I'm kind of a big nerd. But there's also a lot of things that I wasn't. For example, I learned a lot about how to pray at shrines as opposed to praying at temples or worshiping those places. They're very different processes. Do I remember them now? No. But I do remember an interaction I had with a gentleman who taught me how. And he was very sweet. We didn't really understand each other, but we figured out how to learn a little bit about each other. And he bought us some treats as well. So he was very sweet. And speaking of having those sorts of interactions with people in Japan, with Japanese-speaking people, I improved my language skills a ton. Not just my Japanese language skills, but I think my communication skills overall. By immersing myself fully into attempting to speak the language, even if I wasn't very good at it. I got a lot of encouragement from some of the locals just by trying, and so it was good. It was good. I think that I learned a lot, and now I can understand a lot more. I can't speak it very well, though. I did lead a group safely to Disneyland and back, all by myself. I'd never been to a foreign country before, so I'm kind of proud of that one. Never been on a subway really by myself, I didn't know the language too well, but we got there. We went to Disney World and back. We had some incredible food. I met some really tall robots. I'm a big fan of robots. I have a Transformers collection back there, and so I got to meet some Gundam, which was super awesome. And then we also got to experience so much art. And every single corner, there's a little piece of history, or there's an artist that's just performing, or there's installations, modern and old, like all sorts of things. There's just art everywhere, art and music everywhere. And it was so exciting to be able to be in person for all those things that I learned about, during my time at college, but in another country. That was a year ago, basically. We landed in the United States just before COVID. We made it to Hawaii, and then we got the email that there was an outbreak in China, and that someone 30 minutes away from us in Japan may have contracted the virus. And so it was the start of a long journey, but we had made it back just in the nick of time, and I'm really glad that I did. Going to wrap up now, I suppose. I will be launching my concept OST on April 19th. I will have a link somewhere that you'll be able to find it at on April 19th. And I hope that you might give it a listen, and if there's any questions, please feel free to reach out and let me know. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.